What are some of the hardest things to explain about D&D? I'm gonna go ahead and throw spell casting right out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Spell casting is one of the most difficult things to express. I think it's very easy to play a fighter.
Mhm,
I think rogues have a lot going on,
mhm.
but I feel like they're pretty focused. It is a lot to remember that rogues can do a lot of things.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, there's a lot of
Barbarians,
fiddly
I feel
bits.
like, are pretty like a healthy. You know what you're getting. I think we all know what
Yeah,
a barbarian is in our brains.
certainly.
But when it comes to spell casting, woof.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I found that when a new player, like, learns about it, when they're like, "Oh, I can cast spells, I can do magic," that's a big appeal, you know? So, like I said, with one of my new players that I introduced, I was just like, "Tell me what you wanna do. What kind of
Mhm.
this is sort of the spell casting that's available to you at first level, like, let's not worry about the spells, there's it's like half the rule book, don't worry about it yet. Just what do you wanna do? Do you wanna put somebody to sleep? Do you wanna trick them? Do you wanna, like, charm them somehow? Do you wanna just blow something up?" Um, and so that's where I start. Like, I don't shy away from new player. Don't tell them, "Don't play a spellcaster." My first D&D character was a spellcaster. I took over somebody's 13th level cleric in late 2nd edition, you know, and sort of, like, thrown in the deep end, in that sense. And I don't think like, I think you set them up for the game being this thing they can never get if the first thing you tell them is like, "Oh, this is too complicated. Don't worry about that." I do think explaining it a certain way, and I usually go with you have a menu of options that you can order from a certain number of times. This is what you've got. You have these spells available to you. You can use them X number of times per day. And then we're not going to necessarily worry about what they do exactly. I know the saving throws, have a general idea of what they do. Sleep puts people to sleep. They're going to have to pass a save for it. And then when they cast it, if they're ready to know, if they're ready to know the details, we're like, let's look it up and let's see together, you know, not one of these DMs who's like, you better know, immediately. Now, if you've been playing with me for years, yeah, I expect you know what your spell does.
Yeah.
But if it's your first time, or even your second or third, or I don't know, you're still like, still first tier character. I think it's one of those things where you're like, let's look together, let's see together. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does a target self mean? What does it mean when a line extends out from the caster? There's a lot of technical language there, and I know it because I read the rule book cover to cover just for fun. Um, but for a new player, easing them into that complexity is what I'm after. And I start with the narrative, with the fiction. What does it look like? What are you trying to do? What kind of magic do you want to do here? And then we'll add the rules in as they feel comfortable with the limits of what their character can do.
Can that be the allure that maybe as a dungeon master, instead of saying, like, this is something that comes up all the time, and I actually still screw this up. It is a hard thing to keep track of for me for whatever reason. Only one leveled spell per turn. It drives me crazy. I know why it's there. You don't want
Uh-huh.
people casting multiple fireballs per turn, but that know that you can cast the okay. Some spells are a bonus action. First
Uh-huh.
off, you can do that
Uh-huh.
before or after your action. All right,
Yep.
things already gone a little.
Now they're a little wonky because you have to know what you want to do both for both actions. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
now you know. Okay, so say you cast fireball. In your normal action, then with a bonus action, you want to cast another spell. You can't, even if it says it's a bonus action spell, because it's a level 1 through 9. You can
Mhm.
only cast one spell ever. You can cast a cantrip.
Mhm.
Um, but this is where things are like, that doesn't feel instinctually, it doesn't instinctually make sense.
Yeah.
Um, it does make sense for the mechanics of the game, because otherwise,
Right.
again, can't be casting 2 fireballs a turn. Things get real awful. things things start dying real fast, a lot faster than they should.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but it's a horrible thing to keep track of sometimes.
It can be, yeah, especially if you're thinking like bonus action is a fast action
Yeah.
and not just an extra one. that you
Yeah.
get to have. Like that's the big trip up that I've seen, even with experienced players. They go, well, it's a bonus. It must happen real quick. I'm like, oh, let's hold up. It's a bonus in that you get to do extra,
Yeah.
not necessarily that it's any quicker. Only confused by quick and spell, right? From the
Right.
sorcerer, you know. But it's this is one of those things that when I'm playing it in the moment, I if it's going to slow down play to explain this and to get it right, and somebody's going to argue and whatever, then who cares? Like I love the rules. To me, adhering to them and working within their framework is part of why I like the game.
Yeah.
Like I like the structure of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I think it gives it a validity. It
mhm,
gives it
mhm,
that structure, that realism is because if it's too loose, it can be not fun. If you feel there are
yeah,
no stakes and no
yeah,
control, there's nothing to win against.
yeah. And I'm one of those people that it is possible to win D&D. It's just the win conditions are very different
Right.
than what a normal game looks like or a competitive game looks like, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, if the rules are getting in the way, if they're going to break the flow of something, if it's going to pull us out of that moment, then I'm going to let it slide. And then maybe afterwards going, oh, usually it's a bonus action for a leveled spell, cantrip after, but it's no big deal. I've never found it game breaking, you know.
No, because
Uh,
no one's ever doing it on purpose to break the game. Is the point?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
never something that's like way too powerful.
yeah.
Concentration is another big one. If you want
Oh
to
yeah,
play spellcaster in D&D, things are labeled concentration spells. That means you can only concentrate on one of those concentration spells at a time. You can
yeah.
cast other spells while you're concentrating on a concentration spell, but it can't be another concentration
It
spell.
can't
So
be
you
another
can't be
concentration spell.
invisible and have Shadow Blade up. They're both
Yeah,
concentration. You can't be flying uh, and shooting out Everett's black tentacles at the same time.
no,
It's another one of those things that is, uh, I would, inelegant is the wrong word. It just has to be because spellcasting is so much more than throwing knives
hmm
and
hmm
blocking with your shield and having great armor.
yeah,
Spells are complex. They are a creature of their own.
right.
That's why so much of the book is devoted to them.
Yeah, I think to me the biggest trip up there is that it's called concentration.
Yeah.
And when I think of it as just like the spell is alive and it does not like competing with other spells.
Mm.
Like this is magic. It behaves weirdly. You're not going to have fly and haste on, for instance, something I'd love to do in third edition. It's
Oh
great,
yeah.
you know, but the magic is incompatible with each other. And magic has weird rules, right? Dresden Files magic ends at sunup, we have all kinds of rules in Harry Potter for the way magic works. So it's easy to explain in the fiction of the game. And then it's a matter of like this is what I actually find a lot of experienced players trip up on because they might be used to stacking buffs and all this other stuff. But to a new player, I just explain it as if the spell lasts more than an instant, it's not just a flash of magic and then it's gone. We're going to check and see. Some spells don't have it, but most spells do. You can really only have one of them going at the same time. If you put someone into an enchanted sleep, you have to like keep that going. You got to maintain that magic, you know. Otherwise, they're going to break free of it. They're going to wake up. And like in almost all cases, I try to explain things from the setting, the fiction, the in-world stuff first, and then we'll start talking about rules.
Yeah.
But it is weird. I agree.
And getting used to having, and this is on top of your regular spell casting that you're having to learn. You've
Mhm.
got like you will have a little chart that tells you this is how many first levels you can cast 3 first level spells.
Right.
Wait, so I
They're
can
not
cast
keyed to your character
2
level.
third level spells at wait. Okay, I have to
Right.
prepare. I know how many what's. It's a lot of numbers to
Mhm.
keep track of. It will take you time to learn spell casting and keeping
Yeah.
track of things.
Yeah.
Ask your DM for help and check
That's
those
perfect.
boxes.
Yes.
So
Yeah, keep track of them. This is where I like having an experienced player who I know is not going to butt in at the table with me. And I love the way my wife Emma and WebDM's communications director handles it because she plays cowards when she's
mm,
playing with new players. She plays a character that's going to deliberately stand in the back and not try to take the spotlight. And
mm,
usually a support character, druid, cleric, something like that, so that the character's there if they need a heal, if they need some help, but there's not like this character motivation to get super involved. And then what she'll do is she's there to answer questions if they ask. If they seem confused, like, can I help you with that? Can I, or more likely, like, here's how I'm doing it for my character. I just cast this spell. It's a first level spell. I have to touch you, to cure your wounds. That's the way, here's where I found it in the rule book. And like, just sort of walking them through that. And when it's not all on the DM and it's like multiple people at the table helping a new player get involved, like, they're going to spot things I'm not going to spot. I've got all kinds of things going on behind the screen. I might not notice that a player is having trouble with something. I might not pick up on that hesitancy or that confused look. Whereas another player who's experienced and who's the goal of them being there is to help these new players get into it, not to play their character to the hilt. Like, they can pick up on those things and they could lead by example when they need to. And importantly, they're not going to get in their way. Every new player I've tried who plays with experienced players, there's a moment where, like, you can see they're worried about getting it wrong, and that's, you don't want to encourage that kind of thing.
You're gonna get it wrong. You're gonna have your and if you're a dungeon master as well, you're gonna be thinking about story or other things so much. You're not gonna be keeping track. And the worst sin I ever did in terms of D&D, if there is one, is well, it's not the worst one, but rules wise, I can't believe I did it, and I did it on a live stream, and it probably gets commented on once a day. And it is someone tried to cast a spell. No, fireball was cast. Another wizard cast a counter spell, and then I had the wizard who cast the fireball cast counter spell. You can't do that. It's 2 spells. It's 2 leveled spells. I also think I used too many reactions.
Yeah.
At some point. I lost track. I'm a professional DM, you could say. Got it very wrong.
I've had this argument at my table before because I allow it. I let them just because it's outside of their normal action.
Right.
But I've had those moments where someone's like, "No, you can't do that." And I was like, well, I like that moment in whichever Harry Potter movie where everybody's like shooting off all kinds of magic and they're countering each other's. Like, I'm going to summon an ice wall. You're going to hit me with the fireball. Like, it's one thing to go, I counterspell. Tell me what it looks like.
I think magic ruined me there in my brain for counterspell because there's nothing like.
As a blue deck player, I can understand the look of frustration on my opponent's faces.
Yeah, and it's glorious. I don't think it would break the game if you could just reaction up all the time.
Right.
Because I think you would have those like quicker, like,
hey, let them burn their spell levels. That's how.
Yeah, you're burning spell levels. I mean, welcome to Warlock Town. I mean,
not gonna get that shield later.
Yeah, I have to make real hard choices. I'm like, well, I got that Eldritch Smite, but I don't know. Do I have the time to cast Bane?
Yeah, right.
Like, you have to make some hard choices in life.
Yeah.
And those limitations are fun. I do like that kind of Harry Potter. Like, it's a good point on Harry Potter and magic. I think having 2 spellcasters have like those little micro moments would be kind of cool.
Yeah, and especially if you don't let it just slip by in pure game terms.
Yeah,
like, it's easy, especially for experienced players. I attack. Here's clack. I've got a 17. All right. And sometimes you need to do that just to keep things moving along. But there are moments where I like to pause. All right, let's pause for a minute. We'll get to your turn in a second. What does this look like? You just did this. The enemy just did that. This all happened in an instant.
Right.
Let's get our collective imaginations going and get on the same page here. What does that look like? What do your counterspells look like?
Yeah.
Do you just like snuff the magic out? Do you summon the perfect thing that will negate this? Is it a cage of ice to contain a fireball or something like that? And
weirdly, The Witcher.
Yes.
The Witcher is a good example of this kind of thing, but also The Last Witch Hunter has a great counterspell moment where the guy just creates glass with runes etched in it as a wall to stop something from happening. And I'm just like, that film has no business being as pretty as it is or well realized when it comes to special effects.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I'm gonna check it out.
you watch it for the world building and watch
Nice.
it for how they handle magic because it's
Yeah.
so believable. It's so entrenched in reality in some way. It is very. I mean, it is a Vin Diesel film,
Sure.
but it's got some actually got some really solid performances and some stuff I truly love about it.
It's
The other
cool.
thing I would like really want to remind people, especially if you're some of these Gishy type characters.
Hmm.
Don't confuse your abilities as your class as being magic. Even though they are overtly magical, they are not a spell.
Hmm.
One of the best examples of this is say the artillerist artificer. This is they've got a cannon and with a bonus action they can like use a flamethrower basically, or
Right.
send a force of energy, or heal their players. Though this is overtly magical, and also your cannon can also be your spellcasting focus on top of everything else.
Hmm.
Um, that's the power of being an artillerist, is that you can cast fireball and then also basically feel like you're casting a flamethrower on everything on top of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what makes that subclass so great.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean there. Yeah. I think that this fact that spells are this own thing,
Right.
right? They're sort of like separate from everything else, but also they get introduced a lot. There's a lot of things like cast this as if you're casting this spell, or this gives you the ability to cast this spell.
Right. And that
But
does come up. And we see this like we're like, oh well, this is as if it was a concentration spell.
hmm, hmm,
This is where like kind of confusion can kind of come in.
yeah,
Especially for like new players learning casting. So we got a real quick. We've got a couple of questions.
yeah.
We're just
Let's
gonna
take some
burn
questions.
through these.
Yeah,
What
so
is the simplest class for a beginner? What class would you avoid for a first timer? I would avoid wizard, but if you
yeah.
want to learn something, learn it. But wizard, oof,
Wizard's a tough one. All of your abilities come from your spells, pretty much. Like I know that they get class abilities, but like the
yeah,
bread
it's
and
a
butter are your spells.
it's totally a lot. Yeah, I fully agree. Another question: anyone got any advice on dealing with a DM with a blood hunter in the party for the first time? Uh, I don't. Boy,
Yeah,
they die. Uh,
yeah,
I think they're a little bit more. They're a little bit more balanced now, but it is high risk, high
yeah,
reward when it comes to blood hunters. I love the flavor. I think Matt did a fantastic job designing blood hunters.
yeah.
Um,
I like the ones that could Of course, I like the ones that can transform. Forget what the name of them are, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I think for a DM, this is someone who very obviously likes kind of the minutia of magic, but doesn't
Hmm.
want to be a full caster. This is someone who likes to envision kind of like injecting themselves with werewolf blood or vampire blood,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Watch, I would say, a lot of the Witcher trailers for the video game, and you'll see combat kind of done that way.
Hmm.
There's one where they're fighting a vampire, and it's probably one of the best examples of
Yeah.
that kind of blood hunter
I,
feel.
I made a custom druid class just before Wildfire Druid came out, where it was like they could go into a caster rage, and in their caster rage, they got to break a lot of the magic rules, but they also had to use their hit points to fuel a lot of this.
Mhm.
And I don't usually track characters' hit points when I'm DMing, but they'd been hit by a wall of fire a couple of times. They'd been subject to a couple of damaging spells, and then I hit him with a finger of death and didn't realize they only had like 13 hit points left. And and they I did enough damage to have brought them to zero, even if they were at full.
Yeah.
But then it triggers the massive damage and the fact that they'd already been infected with a chaos phage from a slot.
Oh no, they were
And now
not
they're
coming back.
they're not coming back.
Yeah.
Now they're else they're going to rise as a zombie. But the next action someone cast was a gentle repose. And so it was this weird moment of just, okay, wait a minute. I just accidentally killed a 10th level character. My brother's as well on
Oh
stream.
my gosh.
you know, my brother's cool with it. But it raised so many questions. We had to stop playing and just like work through what this means for the characters, for the Josh, do you want your character back?
Yeah.
It was just this moment. So but for the takeaway that I got from it was that risk reward type characters, like the player is going to want to get in over their head. Like that's why you play a risk reward character, is to push that button. Can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? And in some senses, like as long as everybody knows what's on the table, for that blood hunter, as long as everybody's clear on the rules, how they work, like you kind of have to trust the player
Yeah.
to let you know and to let themselves know, like, oh wait, I need to back off. And it might take some adjustment, right? It might take a while to find that balance.
And there a question here. We got
Yeah.
character creation, point by standard array or roll for stats. This recently came up in a discussion having to do with my character, Avon. I thought it would be cute if I actually played with the stats that I rolled. And this is my character sheet that I have right here. I had it laminated. I had wonderful handwriting at the time. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
And I rolled at the time, and we talked about this before. I rolled, a 17 for strength, dexterity 13, con 14, intelligence 10, wisdom 15, charisma 11. This was the character I decided to keep because they're good rolls.
Hmm.
Now there are lots of odd rolls, which you don't want for stats necessarily if you were wanting to be optimized. And this basically told me I had to be a ranger because I had high strength. I had a pretty decent wisdom score. So I've actually taken those rolled stats from when I was like 8 years old or something and applied them to the character I'm playing on Silver and Steel right now. This does make the character have higher stats than point by and standard array. Ultimately, I think it doesn't have that big influence of the game unless you have someone who is like rolling dice and there's something like, I came back with 3 18s. It can happen.
It can happen.
But I've also watched people just roll over and over again until it happens. I'm like, then why are you rolling? If you're rolling until you get the result that you wanted so desperately, then you've lost reason and also the concept of chance.
When it's happened to me, I sent my DM a message like, this is what I rolled. Let me know if you want me to re-roll this. And she was like, it's not a problem. It was, and it wasn't, it's just +1 over somebody else's.
That's the thing is ultimately that +1 is not going to make or break the game by any means. If someone has certain magical items, will break the game pretty quick.
Sure.
Especially if you give them out all willy-nilly. Abusing the rules will definitely do it. Multi-classing will break aspects of the game, I would say, quite quick.
In either direction, overpowered or underpowered, it can do it.
Yeah, either way. I tend to favor point buy because I just want what I want, right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to go that way, standard array is fine as well. You get that low stat, you get high stat.
If I'm making a test character, probably standard array, just because it's quick.
Yeah.
If I'm making a character that I know I'm going to stick around with for a while, like the campaign doesn't have a lot of character death on the table, it's not that kind of game, then rolling, like the randomness of it, will help me discover what kind of character I'm going to end up playing. I love starting a character and I have no idea what I'm going to play. I love showing up to a game where I have no idea, and then I'll discover that character through the creation process. And that's where rolling really comes in. It's really fun, especially if you get a lot of bad rolls and you still want to play the character.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate part is now that I am 6th level, I have like 2 18s. At the same time, I am playing a character, however, that kind of needs 2 18s to even function.
Sure, yeah.
Because when you look at the Undead Warlock doesn't have the advantages that the Hexblade does, where everything's this one stat.
Right.
There's nothing mad, what we call multiple ability scores that you need to make the Hexblade function. To make the Undead Warlock function as a fighter, you gotta, you probably want a con. Definitely, you're a little tanky by nature, but you need a high charisma and you need a high strength to function. This is how it is. It's more rangery, and I would say in that way, right?
Yeah, ranger monks not as much as the 3rd edition monks were, but having just played a ranger, you kind of want a little bit of everything. I played a strength ranger as well, so I was kind of going against the grain there.
Obviously I have.
Right.
The only thing I swapped out was wisdom. So that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you everyone for watching the show. We're sorry if we didn't get to your questions. We had very deep philosophical things to answer about the very nature and the weave of Dungeons and Dragons this episode. Where can we find the great Jim Davis?
Yeah, so I am over on YouTube on WebDM, our YouTube channel where we're talking about D&D and all things tabletop RPGs. We just wrapped up a series on skills and ability checks where we did like a deep dive into skills and tool proficiencies and all the alternate rules for them in the DMG. So go ahead and check those out. We also have WebDM Plays, which is our actual play archive over on YouTube. And then a Patreon where you can listen to us ramble for a lot longer about just whatever weird D&D stuff's in my head that week.
It is a
But yeah,
fantastic show. I once I got my start covering D&D again and got back into it, especially for 5th edition, I did watch myself a lot of WebDM. I highly recommend it. It's a well produced show. It's a fun show. It's fun watching these two people talk all the time and suss it out, figure out all the roles. I absorbed that information very quickly by watching that show. So yeah, if you want to learn even more about Dungeons and Dragons, well, use D&D Beyond. But if you also need to watch it, watch my videos. But also, you should
just
watch
can't get
WebDM's
enough.
videos as well, and you will learn tons about D&D. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great day.